You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Let's get spooky. This is our station, Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen. And welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror, introducing our haunted hosties with the mosties. We've got our lovely Lisa.
Hello, groovy ghoulies.
We've got our kick-ass Karen.
Hello, my horrorholics.
I am your spooky Shannon. And today we are going to be talking about the 2016 book, Things We Lost in the Fire. So let's get spooky.
Hey Horrorholics, it's Shannon. Earth Station Boo has just launched its brand new merch store. It's time to get your hands on some killer gear. From our fun logo shirts, cozy hoodies, Let's Get Spooky stickers, and Horrorholics Anonymous totes, there's something for every one of our lovely little ghouls. We offer our spooky designs on many different types of products to fit your desires. But if you happen to see a missed opportunity, just let us know. And unlike most of Stephen King's adaptations, you know what I'm talking about, you won't be disappointed with the quality of the products. Head over to our link tree in our bio, grab your merch, show off your favorite horror podcast, and most of all, let's get spooky.
What if you could bring 3 experienced producers into your home each week to discuss your favorite movies and the people that made them? That's Tales from Hollywoodland. Your hosts, Arthur, Julian, and Steve, collectively have years of showbiz producing experience. Their weekly show is a fast-paced, fun, and very conversational experience, like spending a good time with your best movie-loving friends and family. Tales from Hollywoodland is available wherever fine podcasts are found. See you at the movies.
Alrighty. So, Mariana Enriquez wrote this book, Things We Lost in the Fire, back mid-2000s and 2010s. This is a collection of short stories that she wrote. To give a little bit of a backstory, Mariana is a contemporary Argentinian author. She also is a journalist. That was actually her entry into the world of writing, is as a journalist. And she is born and raised in Argentina and grew up during the dictatorship that was going on down there. So she has seen all the social and political unrest that can happen, and even the aftermath of a post-dictatorship country. So these stories are going to be a little heavier. So we want to kind of give our friends, our lovely little ghouls, our fellow horrorholics, just a little bit of a heads up. If things get a little espresso, we're really sorry. But we want you guys to hear about this really cool leader in Argentinian horror, because she's got a few other books that have done just as good, if not better, than this one. So let's kind of get into it. Let's just break the ice and give our initial thoughts. Lisa, you get to go first.
Well, put shortly, this is a very hard read. It's interesting how it's written. I listened to it on the audiobook, so the narrator could have been better, but it opened my eyes to a few things. So, I'm probably going to read it again so I can delve even deeper into it.
Yeah.
But slower this time, and, so I can analyze each of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a good book, but it's a hard read.
Yeah. I will recommend for you guys, if you do tackle this book and because you want to read it, you want to experience it for yourself. I do recommend reading each story and then sitting on it. Like read a story, sit on it, and then come back and read the next. And take time to really digest the stories as you're coming across them. But Karen, what about you? What were your first initial thoughts for this?
Is this how some of the stories end? Like abruptly? Okay. So, it's a very unique and hard read. Because the only thing that connects the story is where it takes place.
Mm-hmm.
And you think deeply it should connect with each other a little bit more, but they don't. It's just only the area that they all take place in. But
it's kind of almost like an anthology that way.
so you have to read, a story at a time. I mean, you can power through it. I did power through it, and I understood most of the stories. It's just some of the stories you're just kind of like, let me sit back for a second. Let me go watch something happy, because majority of these stories are very depressing, and you're like, oh man, I didn't need to be more depressed today. So yeah, it's a good book, but you also have to understand, like, if you're not a history buff, if you don't take time to, like, read history of different areas and cultures of different areas, you're not gonna, uniquely understand what's happening in those areas. I, on the other hand, have done history, love to read history and stuff like that. So I understood when she was talking about the political side of it, the cartels, the, serial killer. So
we'll talk about that one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one. But it's a good read, just a heavy read. It's kind of reminds me of reading Good Little Indians, almost, that heavy read.
Yeah. You mean The Only Good Indians?
The Only Good Indians, sorry. That's that heavy read.
Yeah. Very much on that same page. So this is my second time reading this. Dominic, who we've had on the podcast before, he is the book buyer for Book and Bottle, and he also was in charge of running the horror book club. And this was one of the first books that was part of the horror book club. What I love about Dominic and a lot of the books that he had picked for these different book clubs, especially the horror ones, is that he wasn't picking books that it wasn't Stephen King. It wasn't, the typical names of horror authors that you think of. And it's not your normal horror stories. So I've seen a few reviews on this, and I've seen a few people sit there and say, this book isn't scary. What are you talking about? And I'm sitting here going, because it's not going to be a monster story. It's not going to be, Terrifier. It's not going to be it. It's not going to be even Silence of the Lambs. Like it's not going to be like those. It's more of a psychological thing. It's more of like a political thing. But these stories are cultural horror stories. These are folk horror stories because it's horrifying lived experiences in some of them. And yes, there are some that have maybe black magic or some type of supernatural undertone to it. But it is still horrific. It is still something that it makes you clutch your pearls. And then, as Karen said, you're left hanging a lot of the times. The edging in this book is like no other. But let's go ahead and just kind of like dive in, because this is going to be a slightly heavier episode. So sorry, y'all. Many of Enriquez's stories kind of blend the harsh realities of poverty, abuse, political unrest, and a little bit of the supernatural elements. Which story kind of struck out the most to you guys in that balance between the real and the unreal? Lisa, why don't you start us off?
Yes, I have to say the one that struck me the most between the real and the unreal had to be the neighbor's courtyard, because she was so convinced that she saw this child in chains and she heard the noises and she went to go rescue it. And then there's I mean, and her husband's like, no, you're not seeing anything. So psychologically, it's like what happened to her when she was a caseworker, mixed with her husband denying it, mixed with like hallucinations. But was it a hallucination? And then when she went into the neighbor's house by herself and what she found, and then they just dropped it after she saw what she saw. So she was convinced that she saw what she saw, but we don't know if it was real or just mental. And it was like, and then they just left it. And I'm like, what? But it was a nice balance. I will say out of most of them, that was the best balanced one. And that's why I really liked it. Wasn't thrilled about the cat part, but it wasn't like malicious in any way. I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some of the other things I've seen where they like, but it was like this thing is hungry and it wants to eat, and that's what it's got. So it was just weird because it kind of threw me because I'm like, wait, is this real? Is this not real? And her husband's denying everything and she's trying to convince, and then the trauma she had before, and that whole mix of it was just, so that's why that was probably one of my favorite stories.
Yeah. Yeah, that one.
It kind of reminds me of her manifestation of guilt, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah,
she felt
I honestly
guilty
think that's what it was.
Yeah.
about the little girl, and now this is manifesting in hallucinations because for a while she was very depressed.
Right.
But
and she's heavily medicated.
Yep.
Yep. Karen, which one was the one that you thought was pretty well balanced between the normal real world horror and then like that little bit of supernatural?
For me, it would have to be the big-eared runt, the story of the young boy serial killer.
Yeah.
Because, the protagonist, she's just the same name for different people. I'm like, okay. So the protagonist, the tour guide, he goes on, tells about the murder tours, and he sees the apparition of the big-eared runt. And for me, it's more like his obsession of this young man who is a real individual who did kill, who himself was, a child, and also mentally, retarded, I want to say, mentally challenged.
Mentally handicapped.
Who, went around maiming and killing children. And after a while, you could tell that, okay, he sees this apparition of this ghost, of this person, of the killer. And in a way, it reminds me of an obsession because he gets hyper-focused on this one killer. I mean, he has a whole slew of poisoners and murderers, but he's just hyper-focused on this one. And maybe it's because of the stress of his life, because, he is now a new father. He has a better position in his job. His wife is not, she's suffering from her own depression. And in this whole, lack of affection, lack of communication is more than likely he's suffering from his own type of postpartum depression. That's what I'm seeing. And that's why he's becoming so hyper-focused. And when he pulled the nail out of the wall, I was like, oh, that is not, you're going to use it as a prop?
I was thinking his hyperfixation became his delusion.
Yeah, that's what it was, leading down to.
Like, it was becoming, like, he was so hyper-focused, it became real.
Yeah, and his wife is like, I don't want to hear it anymore. I do not want to hear it anymore. And I could understand because his, he keeps talking about that same person over and over and over. But I studied that case, and that was that's a horrific case.
Yeah. For any of you who are just massive like podcast kind of listeners and you want to learn more about the big-eared runt, you can actually go to Parcast Serial Podcast. They actually have, I think, 2 episodes on him. I think there's like the first episode kind of talked about like why he was the way he was, and then I think the second half is like his actual crimes and like them catching him and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, this like it's a legit dude.
Yeah.
This is when I think her journalism skills came into effect when it came to the storytelling. Personally, for me, I think it was Adela's House. That was the good mashup. You had these traumatized kids who like ended up falling in love with like spooky, scary things. And then suddenly this girl disappears inside this house, and how that girl's disappearance haunted both of these individuals till one killed themselves and the other is battling with what happened to her and wanting to go back. I thought that was a pretty good one. I like the spooky of the going into the house portion of it. Speaking of haunted houses and cursed neighborhoods and the such, Marina actually weaves a lot of Argentina's socio-political trauma into her horror. How do you guys think these settings kind of shaped the fear and emotional weight of the stories? Karen, you want to start us off on that?
Well, the thing is, you have to, like I said, you have to learn the history of Argentina to get the social and political horror that happened. But the way she weaves it, especially with some of the areas like the Black Water, where she talks about this little village or city next to the water that is so polluted that it strangles the air around you. And that's a fear that,
Yeah.
we will never have living in an industrialized world that we have. But because of the area, some of these children are coming up deformed and dying of cancer and whatnot. And then you have other stories like, Adelia's house, which these kids are fascinated by what's going on in the house. I believe, for me, like the little girl was kidnapped by somebody and she was, that's where she was kidnapped and the kids were just blocked. Their mind was blocked because of all the violence and drug dealing and everything. It helps shape the story that you're reading because it weaves in and out of everyday life and the supernatural side of it because of, different people, because she even talks about the different religions that pop up in the story. Like you have altars for like, the god of death or the god of life. And then you have altars for saints and whatnot. And because of those, religions, you tend to be afraid of them because you don't know what god or saint that some of these altars are for. In the first book, the first story, the young lady lives in a villa and she talks about all like walking down the street and you can see several different altars for different people, and beyond the over there on the backside, you don't go over there because you don't know if you're going to get kidnapped or sacrificed over there, which has probably happened. So using the historical and cultural and political life and weaving into stories, they're horrific on itself. You don't have to use supernatural or anything like that. But when she does use the supernatural, it sticks with you.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are stories that she uses that you probably don't know. I don't know. That, weaves in and out that you're like, It opens up your eyes to like different, it opens up your eyes to different things. The way she builds her stories, political and, the cultural, the supernatural, the stories of her area. And to live it,
right,
and give you firsthand experience,
right.
And also, I think that's because her journalism makes it even more, an impactful anthology, because she could tell you facts, but also with those facts, she's entertaining you with the story of what she's telling you about. I hope I answered the question. It was kind of heady right there.
Yeah, no, you're good. Lisa, how about you? How do you feel like how these settings shaped the fear and emotional weight of like the stories because of Argentina's social political trauma and all that?
I think it did an overall really great job. I mean, you had the feeling of desperation and loneliness and hopelessness and fear all mixed with you never know what's going to happen the next day or what is that altar. And honestly, I know Karen said that she thought in Adelia's house that it was someone who kidnapped her and the kids just blocked it. I think she stepped in a liminal space and that was more of a supernatural. I mean, that's how I interpret it. And then they couldn't find her anymore because there was that door. But I think because of her journalist, because she's a journalist and lived there, she gives us the feeling, so you actually get absorbed in it and you feel everything. And I think that helps the stories a lot. I mean, atmospherically and just the whole all the information just make you feel horrified in itself.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's most people aren't, exposed to that all the time. So it's like, oh, so it kind of opens your eyes a little bit and makes you go, okay, then now what? Can you get out? Are you desperate?
Yeah.
What is going on? And the fear breeds fear itself.
Yeah. I think she did a great job using what you could easily imagine to create isolation, or to create these environments where fear and like unease could build, like Spiderweb, where they talked about how they went off and they were driving for hours in the jungle. Like, just knowing that you're literally far removed from civilization with an asshole.
Yeah. Oh my God, he was an asshole.
And understanding that by being all the way out there, anything could happen to you. And not just like animals, because you're in, the Amazon jungle kind of thing. No, it's more like a serial killer trucker could come by and get you. Like it's to that weight. But then you have like the dirty kid. Like, you could see that this woman had this gorgeous house, and then these poor people who just like lived in their filth in front of it. She did a really great job creating these things that you could see in your mind. So when you were telling the story, it caused you to go, ugh. Like, I think about like Under the Black Water, how she talked about the water over and over again, where I'm just like, ugh, that sounds so gross, so disgusting.
It makes you want to like take a shower.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, I can feel the slime on me. But I think she did a great job creating those things where you were like already uneasy just by like what was happening around you, to then top it off with, yeah, that's pollution and grossness that's like just makes you go, ugh, already. But guess what? There's now a monster deep down underneath that's wanting to consume everything it comes in contact with. Then you're like, ugh, oh no, ooh, okay. Like it just adds more to it. It's like you're already unbalanced. And she's just like, here, I'm going to add this little extra bit on top. And I think even her not ending some of those stories the way that we would like adds even more to that like unease that you end up having when you're reading the stories, where you're like, I need to know. Now I'm just like, in a state of like almost angst.
Yeah.
A reoccurring theme is how women's bodies and lives are shaped by the violence, and how some of the women actually seem to kind of reclaim power in some pretty terrifying and horrific ways. How do these stories kind of use horror to kind of explore this gender view and thriving to survive?
Okay, so let's deconstruct this for a second. So some of these women, actually majority of these women, depending on what story you're looking at, like with the first one, the villa, the lady is subjugated to violence every single day. She sees it, but she does nothing to really help the violence. So she's kind of like a hermit in a way. She only sees like certain parts that she wants to see. Like, with the dirty boy. She talks about wanting to help him or something, but she doesn't, and he ends up going missing. And the mother ends up going missing and stuff like that. And you're like, well, you see this violence every day, but you're doing nothing to stop the violence that this little boy's going through. You're not, offering him a shelter, but in a way you're surviving, but you're surviving through guilt.
Yeah.
And another story.
And how much of it is like surviving just for herself? Like, I mean, if she were to help, like how much more would she be taking on herself and putting herself at risk?
That's true. But, she talks about that, but at the same time, it's kind of like you see, but you don't see.
Yeah.
And in another story, you have this group of girls that's kind of like a coven almost talking about drug use and, partying and getting hurt in the back of a van. They use violence in a way that is violent towards their own body with the drug use, trying to like find some sort of entertainment in their boring life because they're typical teenagers thinking adults are stupid. Like, oh, the blackouts, who cares? Adults are idiots. And they don't really care about the consequences of the actions, especially when they get that one young girl taking antidepressants and she just basically loses her mind. They don't care.
Yeah.
And then they, go back to doing what they're doing to be friends, And then you have another story that talks about this young lady, the spider webs, where this young waitress is getting harassed, but she's used to it. And, she wants the soldiers to get out. And so in a way, all these women are surviving in a way that they know how to survive.
Yeah.
And the spiderwebs, the two cousins, they have to stop, the husband from interfering because they're like, no, because number one, you probably get shot. Number two, we probably get tortured and raped for days and then get killed. So in a way, their refusal to help is helping them survive. But the waitress knows how to handle herself because she's been in this type of situation before. So the violence that these women either go through or do upon themselves, they learn to survive it because they've been dealing with it most of their lives.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like, but that one story, The Things We Lost in the Fire.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the title story.
Yeah.
We'll dive into the title story, but yeah. Yeah, we'll dive into that one a little bit later in the episode.
So basically, these women go through generational trauma, just like, how, Black people go through their own generational trauma. We learn to survive it.
Yeah.
That's what it is basically, these women have these generational traumas that they're learning to survive.
I mean, I feel like depending on where and the different cultures or whatever, there are different tactics and slightly different struggles. But I feel as women and women as a whole, there's a lot of things that we do that we've had to make second nature for survival. And it's specifically at the end of the day, if I don't want to die or I don't want something horrible to happen to me, I have to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely sad, especially when you have friends who are of the male variety and you have to explain, no, this is why I leave my hand on top of my cup at all times. And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Yeah, you wouldn't have to.
Exactly.
Because you have a penis.
Yeah, exactly. Lisa, how about you?
Okay. They're so used to surviving the way that they're surviving that, like in The Dirty Child, she's more an observer because she's afraid that if she interferes, though she wants to interfere, that she'll get into more trouble because her friend is telling her, don't mess with it, because there's all this stuff that's happening and everything. Yeah. And then she learns when the little boy does come to her house, she feeds him and everything and then takes him for ice cream. When she brings him back and sees the mom there, the mother chooses violence instead of saying thank you. So it kind of shuts her away again. She thinks, oh, okay, I can help. And then no. So she just is like trying to preserve herself and wants to help, but she's not really doing anything about it, even though she sees it every day. It's like a false concern, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And then, the girls that, the parents are stupid, outages, we're going to get high, blah, blah, blah. And then the one girl does lose her mind, but they don't care. They're just trying to survive in their own way and entertainment for entertainment's sake. But they basically beat themselves up and use, drive themselves up just so that they can live every day because they don't know any other way because, it's not like they have TVs or cell phones or anything like that. It's just, they're poor or poverty. And the spider webs, God, I hated her husband. Yeah, it's like when the drunk soldiers were, like Karen said, were, harassing the waitress. The waitress was handling it, but the guy was trying to be this heroic. but you could tell he'd never be heroic for the girls, and they knew it.
Yeah.
So they wanted to get him out of there, and they'll deal with him later. Of course, they didn't really care about him because he was so boring, as his wife said.
Mm-hmm.
And he was such a jerk. But it's just the way they had to save themselves because they knew that what the consequences would be if he disappeared, and he died. So there's a lot of that in there, and it's very interesting because there's a lot of similar things to now what women in general go through. And it makes a lot of people who have it easy and have never experienced this understand it a little bit better. And that's just my opinion. And I can feel for most of these characters. I really can.
Yeah.
I mean, I did feel sad for the young lady, Florencia. And, she has her best friend that she's in love with, but she can't tell her that she's in love with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was in the inn.
Yeah. I mean, even like End of Term, where there is a young woman who sees a fellow student spiral in this self-mutilation. And even though there is a slight supernatural element to that story, it's a very real story. There are a lot of young women who self-mutilate, and it's very scary.
Yeah.
No flesh over our bones, speaks to women who starve themselves to death because they need to be skinny. They need to look a certain way. Again, that one had a supernatural aspect to it, but still the real aspect hits home for not just Argentinian women, but
it's
women and men, throughout the world.
And that story reminds me of Paula in the one with the three girls, where she stopped eating because she wanted to be, pretty. I was like, no, you're perfect the way you are.
Yeah. I mean, even Under the Black Water, you have this woman who's sitting there going, why aren't you guys doing anything? And then, she's attacked and she's harmed when she is trying to help.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's one of those that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
If you don't.
Yeah. But all of these women are trying their best to make the best out of a really shitty and hellish situation that these stories are in, especially the very last one. Ooh, that one, it's coming up, guys. I'm sorry, but it's coming up. These stories in the collection, as we've already said, are intense with emotional and even political horror. What messages or questions did they leave with you guys about society, justice, neglect, or just messages or questions in general that like after you read it, you were just like, here's what I'm getting?
And this is a hard one because you want to think there's going to be a happy ending. But, when you learn about different cultures and everything, you learn that there's not always a happy ending. And it's a message that sometimes we got to open up the Pandora's box and look in so that we can help with the change. Yeah. You have to be aware of the situation if you want to help the situation. And sometimes you just can't help the situation because it's just the way it is. But you have to be aware of it so you can have more empathy and understanding because, not everybody has it as easy as some people. I mean, I know that Argentina, when it was under the dictatorship, it was awful. Yeah. I mean, there were when I lived in Miami, some girls that came from over there just to try to get away. I mean, and the horror stories. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's basically open up the book sometimes, you have to look in and see the horrors so that you can try to change it. But sometimes you just can't change it, but you have to be aware of it. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
It does. It does. I mean, knowledge is power. So if you understand and can grasp what they went through or at least understand like what it might have been like, you can empathize on some level with them.
For me, it's not the message, it's the want of knowledge, because even if you do a little bit of research and whatnot, you want to know the full dynamic of what happened in Argentina to just to get to connect the stories of what, in this book, because the history itself is horrific. And once you understand the history, you will understand like what is going on with, some of these characters. And it's sad. And you have empathy and sympathy for them because you in a way you want to help them, but you don't know how to help them because, the history is in the past.
Yeah.
Only thing you can do is move forward. And how do you change, to move forward? And it's hard.
It is.
Especially when people are still stuck in that mindset of what it's supposed to be and how it's kind of like the boomer mindset, like this was good back in the day, blah, 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 blah. And, some people are still to this day are still stuck in that, mindset. It is, you have to look forward to the future. You have to give the tools to the younger generation.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen, we fucked up. Maybe you could change it.
Yeah.
And that's true for everywhere, really. But that was my message. My message, well, for me, was like to do a little bit more soul searching and more research to figure out what you could do to change not only yourself, but make the future better.
Yeah. I think this collection of stories provided a lot of perspective on how, and we've talked about in other episodes, on how when humanity is brought to a situation, how sometimes there are people who just do like the worst thing imaginable and take advantage of the fact that people are in these situations. And then there are people who step up and try to do the right thing. And it was interesting to see who and how people were doing those different things. You could see the ones who, were taking advantage, like in Spiderweb, soldiers and some of the truckers and all that were they're like, we can get away with it. But then you had the one good truck driver who helped the cousin and then helped them get to a mechanic and helped them get all this stuff and didn't really seem to like be wanting to really take advantage of the situation as much, but was helping. Even with Under the Black Water, you could see there were cops who were using the sludge as a way to get away with getting rid of criminals versus this lawyer who was wanting to do things the right way and to take care of things. And so you could see the dichotomy. And I think what was interesting is there was always somebody who wanted to do the right thing, even if it was difficult and even if it was something that they couldn't physically do. The desire to do the right thing was there. And I liked that. I liked how there was essentially a glimmer of hope in all of these stories, even if it was squandered and even if it was squashed and nullified, there was always like a moment where you could go, oh, please, you can do this. Like, we can make things right. But it did leave questions that are personal questions, like, how would I have handled the XYZ situation? Or even just simply, what should I do to be better? Or, what could we as the human beings do to keep these things from happening? So it was interesting to see all of that and to like experience all of that, not just once, but twice, since this is my second read.
I do have to say, like, Under the Black Water, I felt kind of sorry for the preacher, for Father, because he tried.
Yeah.
He tried.
Oh, he tried. And then the little community wore him down. Like, you could see, because he had unkempt beard and kind of, because he was a young father, wasn't he? He was a young priest, and he looked older than he should. And I was like,
yep.
Because he was in the trenches every day, trying.
And that was something when I read that one the second time, that was something I sat with, where I'm like, it kind of brought me back to like our first responders and a lot of personnel like that, where I'm like, these people are in the trenches and they don't have backup. They don't have replacements. And nobody is really pushing for them to have better care. It's kind of sad. Let's go ahead and just dive into the title story, Things We Lost in the Fire. This story is a woman who, after being abused and burned by the men in their lives have decided, well, y'all, we're going to do it ourselves and make ourselves unappealing to you guys. So that way you won't be the ones who burn us. You won't be the ones who beat us. You won't be the ones who mistreat us. So in protest, they do this. They hold bonfires, and one by one, they take turns becoming disfigured. How does Marina use this body horror, not just for the shock value? Because when you read this story, like hearing some of the things or reading some of the things that these women did, you're like, what the fuck? But it was used to express rage and resistance and essentially systematic failure as well. Like this was probably one of like the heavier stories, and it's the last one in the book. But go, ladies, just go.
Okay, so it started with a spark. It started with one lady, really, who told her story about being burned by her husband because he thought she was cheating, and then he said, "Oh, she lit herself on fire." But when she woke up, it's like, "No, he lit me on fire."
Right.
And it shows to you that a man's word will take more precedent than a woman's word, especially if she's like, incapacitated.
Yeah.
They're like, it'd be like, oh, whatever. And it reminds you of different cultures that, hold the man's word over the women's. So with her, it really defined that a woman could take back her power just by using her voice.
Yeah.
And instead of, using her voice, they started using their actions. Their actions were to do the one thing they know they could do, and that set themselves on fire. And it's kind of like it's because it's a protest, really.
Yeah.
It's like, the monk who basically set himself on fire and and sat there and burnt to death. But these women weren't burning themselves to death. They were basically scarring themselves to show people that we are stronger than what you think we're capable of.
Yeah.
We will rewrite society, because if you're not going to protect us from XYZ, we're going to protect ourselves from XYZ.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a way, they're scarring themselves, saying, "Hey, we're going to take back our power. Okay, if you're not going to protect us, we're going to protect ourselves." And it's creating a new norm that if you're not going to protect us and love us the way we are, we're going to force you to love what we can become. And these are scarred beauties. And it reminds me of a book called The Power by Naomi Alderman, where it takes these young girls, women, and they they basically have this genetic mutation where they give out, electricity out of their hands, and they kind of use it for their own advantage, rewriting history where history was predominantly male. Now it's, probably ruled by men. Now women are taking over because we're not going to take it, by God. So we are going to basically take back what is ours after being oppressed for so long. So yeah, that's the things we lost in the fire. That's what reminds me of. So heavy.
So heavy. Very, very heavy. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Karen, because it was definitely started with the one girl, and she was showing the scars and all this. And then, of course, they were taking the man's word for truth when it really wasn't. And then they started doing it. So out of desperation and hopelessness, they decided to take charge and basically change how the truth was by burning themselves, not to death, but, changing themselves and saying, okay, we're taking your power away and we're taking the power for ourselves. And it was really kind of interesting the way they did that. I mean, and they made themselves beautiful to themselves by doing this. And they didn't care. They just wanted to basically say, fuck you. You want to burn us? We'll just burn ourselves and make ourselves. And you'll have to love us this way. You're not going to protect us. This is how we're protecting ourselves. And, that's how they dealt with it, because they knew that the truth of their situation was unchangeable. So they took matters in their own hands.
Yeah. I mean, this is like
heavy, heavy.
It's heavy, heavy. It's pure body horror for sure. Like, this could be a horror movie and be really well done. And you could, like, I could just see the prosthetics. But there are so many women who this really is their life, of their husband now went a step further in the abuse cycle and they were not able to get away from them. And anytime they reported it, nothing was done about it. And there wasn't any place for them to go. And just one thing led to another. And to the point where they became these disfigured individuals who I love when I see somebody who has been healed. And I'm not talking about physically healed, I mean spiritually healed, because their beauty shines through. And you can see it, even if they are missing an ear or they have fingers missing from their hand, they themselves still feel beautiful because they are beautiful. And it's not because of what happened to them, it's because of what they've overcome. And I think that is the biggest part of this, is that resistance of feeling ugly when really these women were beautiful, no matter if they were burned or not. What I think I don't like most about this one was the foreboding at the end, where our main character for the story, it was kind of foretold that she would be the best burned girl. And I felt for her. I was like, please don't.
Yeah, that was
I know.
Because the way that the women were talking, it sounded as if like she wasn't going to be the one who made it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no. Like I'm all for like fuck the man and like, you know, trying to rectify things through this protest. Although I'm not like 100% behind, you know, self-mutilation. If that's the extreme you need to go to, okay. But to then basically have everyone decide, yeah, we're going to go ahead and have a human sacrifice. Guys, I think we lost the plot. Excuse me. I think we missed something here, because
I mean,
like it just went too extreme.
yeah, it really did. And her mom's in there talking about it with the other lady. I was like,
oh yeah,
I know, right?
and she's
like
just sitting right there, like,
well, and I'm sitting here going, why not? And I mean, they talk about it in the story where like the older women are like, we won't survive if we do this. Even like smaller scale burning, like we're gonna have a harder time physically going through. But I'm sitting here going, if you're going to be going to the point of sacrificing, why don't you do all the old ladies, so that way the younger women can still continue on the protest? Like,
yes, like the longest a girl went through was like 20 seconds. Like, like if you want somebody to like, you know, burn themselves in effigy, let it be somebody who's not going to survive.
Yeah. I mean, or even have it be a group of women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a group of older women. Like would that, I think, would speak more to the political figures than one young girl.
Yeah.
Right.
And one young girl who isn't married, who didn't have a boyfriend at the time. Like, this was somebody who was unattached, who was going to end up making this sacrifice. It didn't, again, they lost the plot. These older ladies lost the plot. But I think this story as a whole was the solidifier for the rest of the stories, even though we didn't get the endings, which we're about to get to. Don't worry, Karen. I think it was the unifier for them all. I think it was the one that said, you see all these little things, here's what it's leading to. And boom, you have this story that really shows that the women have to take it into their own hands because nobody else is going to do it for them.
Nope.
But as we've already stated, and much to Karen's chagrin, these stories often denied closure or resolution. I call it the best edging book ever because you constantly were denied an ending. I honestly though, as is, I feel like the nature of most short stories, I feel like they don't really give you a good closure. But how did you guys feel as the reader? And is that part of what makes these stories unsettling for you? It's because you don't know how it actually ends.
I mean, yeah, because some of them stories needed an ending.
Yeah.
And some of them really didn't. Like the poor girl who, her and her friend was going to do some bad, nefarious stuff, not really nefarious stuff, but prank on the hotel lady. And there was like banging on the shutters and stuff like that. And I wanted to know what happened. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so she went home. Okay. But what happened with the banging? Where was the headlights?
Yeah.
There was no explanation. I was like, what?
Yeah.
It was the stories like that. I was like, I need a little bit more context here. Like, you just can't leave me hanging on that little bit. And then other stories, like the neighbor's courtyard or the neighbor's yard. Yeah, it ended abruptly, but that was fine because that was like, ooh, that kept you on edge. It's just those little stories that just ended for no reason.
Right?
Give me some more context.
Like, personally, I feel like the big-eared runt, I would have wanted just a little bit more. Yeah. It was like, okay, cool. Yeah. He took a nap with a nail in his hand. And, like...
And what?
Like,
I mean, he did
how much farther did he go with it?
Like, he did say he was going to use it as a plot, but my mind went to, like, are you actually going to put it in your wife's head or the kid's head?
I think he's going to do it to his kid. But we don't know.
This one serial killer.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree 100% with Karen about the end because I was listening to it and I'm like, and the banging and everything. And then the woman isn't believing them and she went home. And then all of a sudden the narrator went to another story. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God. There wasn't that was, I think that made it a little bit harder for me because there wasn't, sometimes there's a pause before you get to the next story. There was not, it was continual. And so like, I was like, yeah, the neighbor's courtyard, it was an unfinished ending, but I agree. It was a good unfinished ending because that kind of gets you. Yeah. But even it's like
the story with the three girls, it just ended.
Yeah. It just ended. Yeah. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. All of them just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And I read and listened to when I've done my second read through on this, and there was a couple where I'm like, wait, this isn't the same story. Hang on a second. Okay. I'm in a completely different story. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what happened to, wait, what was the end of that last one? So I'd have to go back and like listen to it. I'm like, oh, they're just leaving us. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Like, so, no flesh over our bones. Like, did homegirl become a skeleton herself? Like, I need to know.
Yeah, right?
Like,
yeah. Give me
something.
Does Vera know?
She knows.
Yeah, she knows.
Poor thing gets, dug up and you're like, like, you okay there, lady?
Yeah. I mean, even Things We Lost in the Fire, it's like, it's kind of foreshadowed of like, oh, this is what's going to happen, but you don't know that for certain. Like, you don't know if like homegirl goes, oh, okay, then peace out, Cub Scouts, because I don't want this happening to me. I'm gonna duck out of town. Like, you don't know if she does that or if she can convince the older ladies not to sacrifice her, like, or if she goes through with it. Like, you don't know why. Because it just leaves you there.
It does.
Yeah.
And like, under the black water kind of left me like, did she get out of the village? Is she stuck in a maze? What's going on? Because it kind of felt almost like,
did the mutant kids get her?
Lovecraft. It kind of felt like H.P. Lovecraft almost.
That one was very Lovecraftian.
Yes.
The kids with, the suckers on their tentacle-like arms and stuff, the eyes too far apart. I was like, am I...
Anybody else picturing the mutants from Futurama?
Oh God.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. I was like,
That is all I could think of was like Leela's mom, who has like the one tentacle arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, okay, am I in Lovecraftian
Yeah.
city now?
Yeah.
And I felt bad for the DA because, number one, I felt bad for her because what happened. But number two,
Yeah.
I'm like, why did you go there by yourself?
And without
Mhm.
telling anybody.
And and number
Yeah.
three, if no one is answering your phone calls, even a landline, that should be like, I need to wait till I have somebody go with me.
I mean, the
Right.
taxi driver even said, I will go with you tomorrow. Do not go today. Like,
The
Yeah.
other lawyer,
taxi-
the other lawyer. The taxi driver's like, I'm not going past this.
Yeah.
Well, he said that he would take her the next day.
Ah.
But like, still, like, it was one of these deals of like, when multiple people were like, please don't, I'll go with you at another time, just not right now. Like, you have to take that in consideration. Like, sweetheart, your survival skills are not there.
Yeah. She was just being
No, it's not.
impatient. She wanted to know, but look what
And
happened.
I'm like, okay, so like, okay, the dude, is he alive? Is he dead? Is he sleeping? Is he dreaming? What's going on? Like,
Mm-hmm.
give me a little bit more context to like what's going on. And
Yeah.
I got the addition with the news story that she had a news story in there added.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, so she ran away? Huh? Because it talks about this girl and her cousin who was living in New York, and her cousin might be schizophrenic, but the cousin's talking about how likes to have sex with ghosts and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I was like, okay, so her cousin who lives in Argentina found a little refuge for, her American cousin, and her cousin walks off into the woods with some dude. And I'm like, wait a minute, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gonna let your cousin do that? That's kind of sketch. I'm upset. I want to know a little bit more about this whole group people thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So, out of all of these stories, which story kind of stuck with you a little bit like more than the other ones? And why? Was it the imagery, the emotion? Was it the unanswered questions that you had afterwards? Or was there something that you just connected to?
For me, it was Adelia's house because I
Mhm.
believe like little Adelia was kidnapped from that house because we hear all these stories about children disappearing,
Mhm.
um, getting sold into like human trafficking, getting their organs harvested and whatnot. And I believe that little poor Adelia was taken in a van. And that was the door. And, they were talking about teeth. There was an anatomy, medical
Mhm.
books and stuff. So that led me to believe that she was taken by organ traffickers.
Yeah.
And these kids could not process, what was real and what was fantasy because they were so entrenched in horror movies and telling
Mhm.
stories and stuff. And because,
And by the way, for those who haven't read the book, Adelia only had one arm. So, in a lot of those cultures, as well as post dictatorship areas, people who have deformities are usually considered the like lost ones, or like they're not important. And so people will a lot of times abuse people like that because they don't have as much value as somebody who is full bodied and abled. So they are higher targets for being sex trafficked or even body harvested. So
yeah. And if you know the area, like I said, if you do the study and history, you know that a lot of kids disappear from Argentina. A lot of kids
Mhm.
disappear from Argentina. And I believe, like, for me, because of, what happened, it stuck with me because, like I said, if you do your history research, it's horrific
Yeah.
because you sit there and think, like, do these kids really get kidnapped for ransom? Yes. If the parents come from like political or high earning financial families, yeah, these kids will get kidnapped and get ransomed out.
Mhm.
Sometimes they will not get their kids back at all.
Yeah.
And for me, I believe like little Adelia got kidnapped and the two kids were so traumatized they did not know how to process it, and the poor boy kills himself because he thinks it's his fault. It's not his
Mhm.
fault. Really, it's not. It's
Yeah.
the people that took her's fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa, what about you? Which
Okay,
one stuck with you?
I have to say the neighbor's courtyard stuck with me the most because
Okay.
it was just so, I don't know, she was on so many drugs for depression and she had made a mistake and got fired. And then she wanted to repair that from her group, her guilt. And she wanted to save this child, whether it was imaginary or not, from the neighbors because she kept hearing these banging noises. But then the mental abuse of her husband was saying that she was crazy and that she wasn't really hearing any. So then she took it upon herself to go to the neighbor's house. There's something about it that just stuck with me. I mean, the visuals were great in my head. I had everything in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the little sticky baby in the chains. I mean, it's kind of gruesome to think about, but it's like,
Yeah.
oh, but yeah, the whole story and all, even though it ended with the way it ended, it was still, wow, is it real or is she imagining it? And I kind of like stuff like that. So, you know what I mean? And the lack of support from her husband just ticked me off, actually, because it's like he was gaslighting her to make her crazy. So was he actually making her crazy or was she actually already crazy or, so
Yeah.
that's how I liked it. Yeah. That's why that one stuck with me the most.
Yeah. I mean, all of these stories are so good. And I think, honestly, if you ask me at different times of the day and of the week or, a month from now, my answer will probably change. But in this moment, the title story, Things We Lost in the Fire, I think that one is the one that it's sticking longer. Or harder, whatever you want to say. I think it's because there is so many layers to it. There is, I don't know, it pulls on my heart for some reason. And it's a great story. I think the imagery in it's really good. I think overall it's probably the most well written out of all of them. I don't know. It's just a really good story. But it is about that time for us. So let's do our final thoughts and skull ratings. For those who are new, we do a 1 through 5 for skulls. 1 because they tried. They worked hard. They put the time and energy into it, so they deserve at least some credit where credit is due. And then 5 because it's an awesome read. So, Lisa, you get to start us off. Final thoughts, skull rating, and we have plenty of time, so you can be a little longer winded if you want. Not like super long winded, but
no, you're cool. Heavy book. It was good. I'm definitely going to read it again so I can sit on the stories a little bit more. Trigger warnings for anybody who's sensitive to this kind of stuff. It did get me a couple times, but all in all, it was pretty decently written. I wish I could read it in page and not have to listen to it because the narration, really, I was not happy with the narration. I think they could have chosen someone better. No offense to the narrator, but just sometimes she talked too fast. And it was like, slow down, because there were some details I feel like I missed, so I'd have to go back a little bit. But all in all, I would call this a 3.5 because it's so heavy. It's a good book. It may not be for everybody. Do your research on the history so you can understand a little bit more. But it's definitely something that I would suggest. But if you are triggered, you might want to think about it.
Karen, how about you?
It's a very heavy book. I enjoyed it for what it is, being, a little history buff, knowing about serial killers and what happens in areas like that. So it gets very horrific when when you do a deep dive, especially during the dictatorships and stuff like that. It gets very heady and horrific. That being said, I think maybe it's the translation, because sometimes when you translate it from one language to another, it just doesn't translate very well. And sometimes it translates perfectly, and sometimes, the endings was not very, I need more of a context here. I get it a
They-
3.5. I'm not gonna, go out and reread the book again unless we have to. Like if
Mhm.
somebody says, "Hey, can you like do a deep dive on this one story?" Okay, we could do that.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna like reread the whole book again, unless I have a hankering to reread like Adelia's House or Under the Black Water or red green red orange. That was actually a pretty deep story.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm going to give this a 4. I think overall, each of the stories is bare bones is really great. It's minus a star because I wish she would have finished or gave a slightly more closure on the majority of them. But I think overall they're written really well, so it's easy to be able to read them. It is heavy. It is heavy, but I think in a world where a lot of stuff is lacks depth and lacks insight and lacks intellectual stimulation, this is kind of refreshing on that end. It's heavy, don't get me wrong. Like I say refreshing, but it is a very heavy read, but it's heavy because it mentally stimulates you in a way that not everything does. There's a lot of horror out there that doesn't mentally stimulate you. It's just there to boo, and this makes you go, the fuck. And like you want to stop and sit and process what you read. So it's a great book. I do recommend it for people. And like Karen said, definitely please like do some research, even if it's just, I'm not even gonna say like do a deep dive on the research, but at least get like an understanding of what happened in Argentina. Marina was born in the early 70s, so she was in her formative years in the 80s when this dictatorship was going on. So like understanding her mental state through all of it, you know, it changes your perspective when you read the story versus just reading it and going, the fuck, like, and not understanding like why it hits a little different. But I understand if deep diving into that is not something that's for you, I get it. But at least kind of skim and get like the gist of the history. So that way when you read this, you get a little bit more of the emotional side to it all. But if you've read this book, which story is your favorite and why? We would love to really, know all of that. You can tell us on all of our social media so we can continue chit-chatting and having a good yap sesh, even though it is a little on the heavier side. This episode wasn't as heavy as I thought it was going to be. Like going into it, I was like, oh, this is good. I'm gonna need a drink after this, or I'm gonna have to watch some Monty Python or something. And I don't feel like I do. So it's exciting. But come tell us on our social media. We are on all the things, and you can find us at Earth Station Boo. We have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have X, we have Threads, we have Blue Sky, we have our Facebook group, and we have the Crypt, our Discord server, where you can come, you can chit chat with us. We've got questions of the day. You can chat about movies, books, anything really. We've got a channel for you. Even some of our guests are fun members of the Discord, so you can even chat with them on episodes that they've been in. So come check us out. You can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Apple, Google, Spotify, and the tube of you. We are there. So come talk to us, chit chat. We do comment back. Ladies, where can they find y'all at? Lisa?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and I'm back on TikTok
Rock on.
because I decided to start doing short little films. So I'm just using it for that. So
Cool.
we'll have
groovy.
the link up there so you can check me out.
Groovy. Karen, what about you? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Reddit.
Groovy. And I'm Shannon. You can find me on all the things at Spilled Tea Wine Media Mind. And as always, thank you, our beautiful little lovely ghouls and fellow horrorholics. We are so thankful for you guys. We really do appreciate every like, subscribe, share. Everything you guys do to help support us is truly a wonderful thing, and we cannot express our gratitude. So, stay spooky.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.